Because as we find with so many things, when people talk about peace, they can be talking about different things. And I look to some of our favorite Christmas movies, some of our favorite holiday movies, to express just the different ways people think about peace. Show us, Jim, the first Christmas movie you might think of is Star Wars Episode 1, The Phantom Menace, right? That's not a Christmas movie. But you all remember this, right? Boss Nass at the end of it holding up that glowing orb and shouting peace. You know this story? It's not my favorite Star Wars movie either. But he's shouting peace because his alien species and the humans have gotten along in order to set themselves free from the Trade Federation. And so for them, that's what peace means. It means freedom from a power telling them what to do. But we'll give you something a little bit more familiar, something a little more Christmassy. Show us, Jim. Let's take this projector out for a spin, right? You might think of George Bailey, who in It's a Wonderful Life, watched it just yesterday. We are told that he weeps on VE Day and VJ Day because, well, the world was at peace. Hostilities in the world, all these countries that had been at war, the killing was over. This war that had put George's friends and family in danger. And so that's what peace means to George Bailey. One more, Jim, you might think of Phil Davis from White Christmas, who tells his business partner here, played by Bing Crosby, he wants his partner to go and have 9 children, and if he spends just 5 days with each child, that gives him 45 minutes, and he can go get a massage or something, 45 minutes of peace and quiet. So for Phil Davis, peace is just a little bit of time to himself. We've all got different ideas about what peace means depending on what situation we're in at the time. How are we using this term? So as we come to light the candle of peace today, and we talk about peace and all those other topics that we associate with Advent, like hope and joy and love, we have to ask ourselves today, just what do we mean by these terms? What is meant when we talk about peace during Advent? Because society's going to tell us that peace is whatever you want it to be, because that's how everything is in society nowadays. It's so subjective. You just make up your own mind about what peace is. You want world peace, you can have world peace, right? But we know better than that. We know words actually have meaning. When we talk about peace, we know it's in some way at Advent time related to who Jesus is or who the prophets had said he would be. So when the Gospels or the prophets associate Jesus, the Messiah, with peace, well, they mean something very specific by it. If we believe the Scriptures declare that Jesus came that first Christmas to bring peace on earth, and I believe the Scriptures do teach that, then we must look at what specifically Scriptures mean by peace. Otherwise, we're just left, making up our own idea again about what peace is. And in doing so, we miss out on the great gift God gives us in Christ as the peace that he says he is according to the Scriptures. That's the great gift. And we all want peace. None of us want to miss out on this. So what is meant when we refer to Jesus during Advent as peace? Or in terms of Advent, what's a name we often use for Advent? For Jesus during Advent? Prince of Peace. What do we mean? Well, many of us know the name for Jesus, Prince of Peace, isn't a man-made name. It's not something just people came up with over the years to talk about Jesus. It's actually scriptural. We find it in Isaiah chapter 9. Hundreds of years before Jesus is born, Isaiah the prophet, he's giving this beautiful prophecy about who Messiah will be when he comes and what he will be about. And right in the middle of it, we get verse 6. Jim, put it up there for us, please. For to us a child is born. To us a son is given, and the government will be on his shoulders, and it will be called Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, Prince of Peace. We know that verse, don't we, many of us? Certainly if we know Handel's Messiah, we're a little bit familiar with that. And it talks about this child, a son being given. You see, the great thing about this child that Isaiah says is going to come, he says, the world doesn't have to ask for him. God's going to give them. And so when the world doesn't even know enough to know they need him and ask for him, God's going to send this child into the world. And And this child, he's going to do so many wonderful things that we're going to have to name him different things to talk about the different things that he does. And his names, what are they? Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father. And there it is, Prince of Peace. He's going to be the Prince of Peace, this child who God's going to give us. Meaning, well, first, he's going to be royalty. He's going to be a prince who comes and rules in his father's place. And his rule will be one of peace, so much so that that's just what we're going to call him. Oh, he's the Prince of Peace. That's who that is. Right? And we're going to assign him that name. And that name has meaning, because when we assign people names, it has meaning, doesn't it? We give people a special name. Like when I was growing up, my neighbor used to call me Stick. It was many years and pounds ago. But he did it because, well, at the time, I was rail thin. Like a stick. You see how original it was. You see, it was just, there it was. But at the time, the name described one aspect of my being so well that anytime anyone would hear him calling me Stick, they knew exactly what he was getting at. That assigned name had meaning. And so when Isaiah declared that Messiah would be called Prince of Peace, he was saying something about the Messiah, what Messiah would be about, his work, his purpose, his meaning in this world. Hundreds of years before Jesus stepped on this earth, Isaiah assigned him this name, Prince of Peace. Isaiah told us clearly, Messiah will be known for ruling in peace, and we know that because that name has deep meaning. But Isaiah isn't done with this idea of peace in just verse 6. He goes on to verse 7, show us, Jim. Of the increase of his government and peace, there will be no end. He will reign on David's throne and over his kingdom, establishing and upholding it with justice and righteousness from that time on and forever. Again, we're familiar with these passages out of Isaiah, but he's talking about peace, and he says the type of peace to be brought by Messiah would not be a temporary peace. He says it's going to have no end. You see, worldly peace brought by things in the world, that's temporary. I thought about this. For instance, the Treaty of Versailles, signed on June 28, 1919, is considered to be the most important treaty of World War I, effectively ending all hostilities between Germany and the Allied powers. And so when that treaty was signed, the world breathed a sigh of relief. We have peace. Not so fast. 20 years later, 1939, we get the start of World War II. Lasts for 6 brutal years, till 1945. We finally see the fighting end in Europe and then over in the Pacific waters. And the world breathes a sigh of relief. Finally, we have peace. Not so fast, because just from the American perspective, then we have Korea, then comes Vietnam, then the Cold War, then Desert Storm, then war in Iraq again, and all these other smaller skirmishes in between. Worldly peace is temporary. But Isaiah declares that the peace to be brought by Messiah that we now talk about during Advent, it's not going to have an end, no end. The prince will reign forever, and therefore his peace will remain forever. That's quite a feat, one that the world outside of Jesus is completely unfamiliar with. We are completely unable to bring about our own peace ourselves. So we looked at this peace to be brought by the Prince of Peace, Jesus, we now know when he came. But we come back to the original question, don't we? What do we mean by peace? What did Isaiah mean when he declared peace through Messiah? Because let's be honest, we know Jesus came as Messiah 2,000 years ago, and now here we are 2,000 years later, and do we have peace in this world? No. So what, was Isaiah wrong? What's going on? Lots of questions. We can start to find answers when we look a little bit more deeply at the biblical text from Isaiah. You know, Isaiah was writing in Hebrew back in his day, and so we look at the original language that he used for the word peace in both verses 6 and 7. And that term he used for peace actually comes with a number of layered meanings. So they kind of pile up on top of each other. Often when we think about peace, we think about it in terms of human relationships. Are we at peace with our neighbors, our coworkers, even in our family? Do we have peace within our family? And that goes beyond to bigger places. Do we have peace among and in the nations? And certainly, that's part of the meaning of the word Isaiah used for peace in his passage here. But it's only the tip of the iceberg. It goes deeper than that. The word also comes with this meaning of healthiness, well-being, lacking in disease. And on top of that, it comes with the idea of an intact state of favorable circumstances. Now, what the heck does that mean? It means completeness. But beyond all that is this idea of peace meaning safeness. When you are at peace, you are in a state of being safe. You are in a state of being free from whatever would bring you down. You are safe from it. You are saved from it. You are saved. So the idea that Messiah Jesus would come as the Prince of Peace means that he would come to save us in such a way that would bring us wholeness. It's really what we're talking about is this idea of wholeness. And the Prince of Peace's salvation would be found completeness in this world. It's not something that you have to wait someday to get to, but it's a state we can experience now. It's what it meant when Isaiah said the Messiah will be the Prince of Peace. And when Messiah came, Jesus came, this is an identity he actually leaned into, like a purpose and mission that he carried with him everywhere he went, knowing, I'm the Prince of Peace. That's why we see Jesus in the Gospels healing the sick and the lame. And we see him casting out demons and taking his time to nurture and to be physically present with the grieving, the discouraged. What he's doing, he's saving them from what brings them down. He's ushering them into peace. He's ushering them into this wholeness that only he can bring. And that's what Jesus is getting at. The night before his death, when he is addressing his disciples in John chapter 14, Jim, show us this, John 14:27, Jesus says, peace I leave with you. My peace I give you. I do not give to you as the world gives. Do not let your hearts be troubled, and do not be afraid. Jesus said, I'm giving you peace. I'm leaving it here with you. He gives it. If we only accept it, then we can experience it, this wholeness, this complete well-being in all aspects of our lives today. Jesus says he gives us peace in a way the world does not give it. He says, I don't give to you the way the world does. That's important because often we look at the things of this world to bring us peace, don't we? Especially at Christmas time. Sometimes we don't like to admit it, but we're looking at the things of this world to bring us peace because we'll be at peace if, I get what I want under the tree. And many of us balk at that because for many of us, our peace comes if I can think about what other people want and I can get it for them and give it to them on the tree. If they're happy with what I got them, then I'm at peace. So it's kind of about other people, but we're still looking to that thing out there to give us peace. Or how about this one? I'll be at peace if we get all the family stuff right. All the food, all the decorations, all the pictures, all the interactions. We get it just right, and I'll be at peace. That's all stuff the world gives us. Does it ever give us lasting peace? You know the answer is no. I don't know why we ever think it will. But somehow most of us, if we're honest with ourselves, we get lulled into thinking those things are going to give us peace. It doesn't last. Jesus says, I don't give you peace that way. That's shallow, temporary peace. Jesus says, I don't give shallow and temporary peace. The peace Jesus gives is complete. He makes that claim, and he can make that claim. And that claim he is making is based on what he means when he says, peace I give you. Because again, we look at that word peace in its original language, and now this time it's written in Greek in the original language it was in. And in this Greek word for peace here, it means harmony and tranquility. Okay. Freedom from worry. All right. And get this. Fearing nothing from God. Jesus says, I give you peace. I give you the state of fearing nothing from God. And Jesus speaks this to us because he knows that we all have something to fear from God. God's wrath, God's retribution, because we earn it in our rebellion, in our disobedience, and in our sin. But Jesus also knows why he came to this earth. He knows he came to this earth to die on a cross, to pay the penalty for our sins, so that whoever believes in him will be forgiven of their sins. Whoever follows Jesus is free from God's wrath. Whoever follows Jesus fears nothing from God. Instead, they are lavished in God's love and mercy and grace and goodness forever. It's all eternity, ladies and gentlemen. And so this eternal perspective and peace, it impacts every fiber of our existence. Every moment of our lives, we walk through this life, those who follow Jesus, not fearing anything from God. And nothing else compares. No matter what happens to us in this world, no matter what other people do, I rest in God's hands. And I'm in God's hands, and he's not going to squeeze me. He's going to protect me there. I've got nothing to fear from him. He gives us complete wholeness in salvation with God. That's the peace that he speaks of. And what this means is that anytime we are not at peace within ourselves, anytime we are not at peace with other people, it's not somebody else's fault, because Jesus has given us peace. It means we've lost contact with Jesus in some way. We've stepped away from the Prince of Peace. This Christmas, when you're stressed or you're upset beyond everything because, I don't know, Aunt whoever made another scene at the family Christmas gathering, or your Christmas is ruined because so-and-so did this or that, if that's what you're starting to think, you need to stop. Because this is an indication to you that you need to reconnect with Jesus, because you're letting other things in this world take you out of the peace Jesus has given you. You're in a place where you are fooled once more into thinking worldly things are going to bring you peace. They won't. They haven't. Recognize you need to reconnect with Jesus, the Prince of Peace. Ask him, Jesus, please be for me what I need in this moment. What do I need you to be, Jesus? And then ponder and meditate on how Jesus' eternal peace fulfills that need within you. Or meditate on how the peace Jesus gives makes that something you now recognize you do not need. Reconnect with that. Because that's the peace that passes all understanding. Peace that you cannot get anywhere else. This goes not only for the Christmas season, but for the whole year. Because Jesus came to bring us peace every day, right? Anytime we find ourselves in conflict, or anxious, or stressed, we've probably in some way disconnected with Jesus, our Prince of Peace. In some way, we've wandered farther from Jesus than we should. Regardless of what every other person is doing, turn back to Jesus. You look to him for peace. And let his peace, that eternal wholeness that he gives you, reshape your moment and your situation. I had to remind myself of this week, because this was one of those weeks where, as a pastor, way too many things to get done and not enough days, not enough hours in each day, right? I had stuff I normally do throughout the week, but then, we had our young adult fellowship, and then our Advent Bible study, and then there was a ministerial meeting, and then there was an after-school program, and then there was an APCO-PAD board meeting I had to be at, and on top of it all, I had breakfast with Santa hanging over my head, and I felt it hanging heavy this year. I shared with some people Wednesday evening how I was just like, I was stressed about breakfast with Santa this year, and I wasn't ready. And on top of that, I still had to find time to write a sermon. And I had some people in the congregation. I really wanted to be able to sit and just talk with them and be with them and let them know that they are loved and that Jesus loves them. And it was just all there. All in one week. And as a pastor, weeks like this happen. You don't have to be a pastor to have a week like this happen. You all have had weeks like this, right? You know what I'm talking about. And so for the first part of the week, I was just a bundle of anxiety and worry. And I would wake up in the middle of the night and I would spend hours in my bed. I felt like Aunt Dixie there for a while. I would just spend hours in my bed when I was supposed to be sleeping, worrying about how I'm going to get everything done and everything accomplished that I need to get accomplished in the amount of time I have. And then I would start to worry because I wasn't getting sleep and I was going to be too tired to do the things I needed to get done, right? And I was there. And then Thursday hit. And I started earnestly looking at these thoughts and ideas that I'm presenting to you all here this morning, and I realized I wasn't at peace. I was missing the peace of Jesus Christ in my life, and I was paying the price for it. Because I was looking at all these things the world tells me I have to get done. You got to get this done. You got to get in. And I said, I'll get these done, and then I'll be at peace. But I'd wandered from Jesus and was paying the price for it, so I had to go to Jesus. I said, Jesus, in this day, in this moment, be for me what I need. Just be what I need. Jesus, center me, please, on your peace so that I can experience it right now, the fullness of my eternal salvation in you. I had to go to Jesus and ask him for it, and he gave it to me. That stuff didn't go away. The stressful situation didn't leave. But in the midst of it, I was at peace. And so much peace that I actually overslept an hour and a half yesterday morning, and I was half an hour late to breakfast with Santa. But I was at peace. And I was better able to serve my God in this world because I was connected to the peace that Jesus brings. Only Jesus can bring lasting peace to this world. You get that? Nothing any government does can bring peace to this world. Only Jesus. And he does it by starting in the hearts of his followers. He does it by starting in your hearts, my heart. Peace on earth depends on us. If you want world peace this Christmas and beyond, it starts with you. With you turning to Jesus, the Prince of Peace, and finding your wholeness in him first. And then taking that wholeness, that peace that Jesus gives you, and then you share it with the world. That's the message of peace I give to you this Advent.